If you're my future wife, there is something I need to tell you before this comment disappears beneath thousands of others. Because if you are out there right now reading these words and you scroll away without recognizing what this is, we might miss each other. And I know how irrational that sounds. I know a man who builds companies, studies systems, calculates probabilities, and spends his life trying to predict the future, should probably know better than to believe that one comment on one video could matter. But tonight, I do because love has always been the one variable I could never model. Everything else follows patterns, markets follow patterns, technology follows patterns, human behavior follows patterns. But love arrives like a software update, nobody scheduled. Suddenly everything changes. And by the time you realize it happened, you're already living inside a different reality. So, if you're my future wife, I need you to listen carefully because this might be the closest thing I've ever made to a confession. Not to the world, to you, to the woman I haven't met yet, or maybe the woman I've already met and failed to recognize. That possibility keeps me awake more often than I admit. What if we've already crossed paths? What if you stood in front of me somewhere and I was too distracted to notice? What if I was thinking about deadlines while you were becoming one of the most important people of my life? What if fate introduced us and I accidentally walked away? Do you ever think about that? Do you ever wonder whether two people can miss each other by only a few seconds and spend years feeling the consequences? Because I do more than I should. Sometimes I imagine you living your ordinary day. Maybe you're making coffee. Maybe you're reading something before bed. Maybe you're carrying a sadness nobody around you fully understands. Maybe you've become so used to being strong that nobody notices how tired you are. And somehow the thought of that hurts because if you're my future wife, then your struggles matter to me already. Even before I know your name. Even before I know your voice. Even before I know whether you exist on the other side of this screen. That sounds impossible. Yet here I am thinking about someone I cannot prove exists. Feeling protective towards someone I've never held. Missing someone I've never met. Tell me something. Have you ever felt lonely in a crowded room? Not physically alone, emotionally alone. The kind of loneliness where everyone sees your smile but nobody sees the weight behind it. The kind where you start wondering whether deep connection is something other people get to have. The kind where you begin lowering your expectations because disappointment feels safer than hope. I wonder if you've felt that because I have. Not the loneliness of isolation, the loneliness of success. The loneliness of becoming the version of yourself everyone admires while secretly wondering whether anyone truly understands you. People think achievement solves loneliness. It doesn't. Sometimes it amplifies it. The higher you climb, the fewer people can see what it cost, and eventually you start asking a terrifying question. Will anyone ever love the person behind the accomplishments? Not the image, not the reputation, not the story, the actual person, the flawed one, the uncertain one, the one who has doubts at 2 in the morning. The one who occasionally fears he is building everything except the life he actually wants. Maybe that's why I'm talking to you tonight. Because if you're my future wife, I don't want you falling in love with the version of me the world sees. I want you to know the version nobody sees. The man who still questions himself, the man who still worries, the man who sometimes stares at the ceiling, wondering whether he's accidentally prioritizing ambition over connection. And maybe that's where my fear begins. Not fear of commitment, not fear of love. Fear of finding you too late. The fear that while I'm building a future, I'm overlooking the person I'm supposed to build it with. That thought follows me everywhere because time is strange. When you're young, you think you have endless amounts of it. Then one day you realize life is not measured by years. It's measured by opportunities, conversations, moments, people, and missed chances. Especially missed chances, those become ghosts. And I have enough ghosts already. Enough moments where I should have said something. Enough moments where I should have stayed. Enough moments where fear disguised itself as logic. You see, that's the dangerous thing about intelligent people. We can rationalize almost anything. We can build arguments against our own happiness. We can explain away feelings. We can delay vulnerability. We can convince ourselves that waiting is wisdom, when sometimes waiting is simply fear wearing expensive clothes. Have you ever done that? Have you ever talked yourself out of something your heart already knew? I think most people have. I know I have. And maybe that's why this matters. Because somewhere inside me is a quiet suspicion. A suspicion that when I finally meet you, I won't recognize you immediately. Not because you won't matter, because you will matter too much. And people rarely recognize the biggest moments while they're happening. They recognize them afterward. When it's almost too late, when the train is already leaving, when the door is already closing, when the silence has already done its damage. That possibility terrifies me, which is why I'm saying something unusual tonight. If these words resonate with you, stay for a little while. And if you decide to subscribe, maybe I'll keep leaving these messages where you can find them. And before you go, tell me where you're watching from, because part of me wonders how far apart we are tonight. There is another reason I'm making this confession, a reason deeper than everything I've said so far, but I'm not ready to tell you yet. Not because I'm hiding it, because saying it out loud makes it real. And once it becomes real, I can't take it back. What if I told you there was a moment in my life that permanently changed how I think about love? A moment that made me realize how easily someone can lose the right person without even understanding what they're losing. A moment that still follows me. A moment connected to why I'm speaking to you now. I haven't told you the real reason yet. And honestly, I'm not sure you're going to like it when I do, because it reveals something about me that most people never see. Something vulnerable, something uncomfortable, something that almost convinced me that love was a risk I shouldn't take. And if I'm being completely truthful, there are nights when that fear still wins. There are nights when I wonder whether choosing love is the most courageous decision a person can make, or the most dangerous, because once someone truly matters, you give fate leverage. You create the possibility of loss, and loss changes everything, which brings me to the question I can't stop asking. What if you're already closer than I think? What if you've already left a comment somewhere? What if we've already passed each other in the noise of the world? And what if the reason I'm making this video isn't to find you, but because deep down I'm afraid of what happens if I don't? Because there is a truth I have been carrying for years. A truth connected to someone I never expected to lose. And before I can tell you what I really want from love, you need to understand what that loss taught me. Because that's where this story actually begins. I wish I could tell you that what happened taught me something simple, something clean, something inspiring, but it didn't. It left a scar. And scars are complicated things. People think scars are reminders of pain. They're not. They're reminders of who we became because of pain. Years ago, I believed love would arrive logically. I thought there would be certainty, evidence, a clear signal. I assumed that if someone was truly right for me, there would be no confusion, no hesitation, no internal conflict, just clarity. But life rarely works that way. The most important decisions often arrive disguised as uncertainty. And that's exactly what happened. I met someone, not someone I married, not someone who became my great love story, at least not officially, but someone who quietly changed the way I looked at connection. The strange thing was that nothing dramatic happened. No movie scene, no grand declaration, no impossible romance. Just conversations, small moments, tiny details. The kind of details most people ignore. The way she listened, the way she remembered things. The way I found myself wanting to tell her about my day before anyone else. And that frightened me. Not because of her, because of what it revealed about me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't completely in control. Feelings don't ask permission. They don't wait for perfect timing. They don't check calendars. They simply arrive. And suddenly I found myself standing at a crossroads. One path required vulnerability. The other required distance. One path involved risk. The other involved safety. And I chose safety. At least that's what I told myself. I called it wisdom. I called it patience. I called it responsibility. But snorts years later I realized something painful. Sometimes we rename fear because we're ashamed to admit it exists. I wasn't protecting my future. I was protecting myself from the possibility of rejection. There is a difference. A massive difference. Tell me something. Have you ever watched yourself make the wrong decision while convincing yourself it was the right one? Have you ever felt your heart moving in one direction while your mind dragged you somewhere else? That feeling stays with you long after the moment passes. Long after the opportunity disappears, long after everyone else forgets. And that's why I still think about her sometimes. Not because I loved her, because I never gave myself the chance to find out if I could. That uncertainty became heavier than rejection ever would have been. Because rejection ends, questions don't, questions stay alive. Questions follow you into quiet rooms. Questions sit beside you at night. Questions become alternate futures. And alternate futures are dangerous. They convince you that somewhere another version of yourself is happier. Another version took the risk. Another version spoke honestly. Another version didn't run. Maybe you've experienced that too. Maybe there is someone whose name still appears in your mind unexpectedly. Not because you're obsessed with them, because a chapter never received an ending. Human beings can survive heartbreak. What we struggle to survive is ambiguity. We want conclusions. We want answers. We want certainty. And life rarely provides it. That's the hidden truth nobody talks about. The moments that haunt us most aren't always the painful ones. They're the unfinished ones. They're the almost, the may, the possibilities. And that realization changed me for a while. Then something happened that I never expected. Something that complicated everything again. Because after convincing myself that I had learned my lesson, after promising myself I would never let fear make decisions for me again, I met someone else. And this time I was determined to be different. This time I was going to be brave. This time I was going to trust my feelings. This time I was not going to walk away. At least that's what I thought. But life has a strange sense of humor, because courage sounds beautiful until it becomes necessary. When the moment actually arrived, when the emotions became real, when the possibility of genuine commitment appeared. Old fears returned, not quietly. Violently, questions attacked from every direction. What if she leaves? What if I disappoint her? What if I choose wrong? What if she isn't the one? What if someone else appears later? What if forever is a mistake? Those thoughts are poison, not because they're unusual, because they're endless. They never stop feeding themselves. And the more options life presents, the harder certainty becomes. Do you know what terrified me most? It wasn't losing her. It was realizing I might become the kind of man who always keeps searching, always comparing, always wondering whether something better exists around the corner. That possibility disgusted me because real love cannot survive endless comparison. Real love requires a decision, a choice, a commitment to stop searching. And for a period of time, I wasn't sure I was capable of that there. I said it the truth most people never admit. I was afraid I might become the very thing I despised. A man chasing perfection while overlooking something real. A man collecting possibilities instead of building a future. A man so terrified of making the wrong choice that he never fully chooses anyone. I told you there was something uncomfortable. That's it. That is the truth I hide from most people, because everyone wants confidence from a man. Everyone wants certainty. Everyone wants strength. But strength without honesty is performance. And the honest truth is that I have wrestled with those fears for longer than I care to admit. What if you're watching this right now, and you're wondering whether I'd choose you? That's the question, isn't it? Not whether love exists, whether someone will choose it, whether someone will choose you completely. Without keeping one foot near the exit, without constantly evaluating alternatives, without treating love like an experiment. I think every woman deserves that. And for a long time, I wasn't sure I deserved to offer it. Then something happened. Something that shook me harder than any heartbreak. Harder than rejection. Harder than regret. I watched someone lose the person they loved. Not through betrayal. Not through conflict. Not through some dramatic ending. Through time, one ordinary day, everything normal. Then suddenly, nothing normal. Again, a phone call, silence, shock. The kind of loss that doesn't ask permission. The kind that arrives before anyone is ready. And standing there watching that devastation unfold, I felt something inside me break because all the questions that once seemed important suddenly became meaningless. What if she's not perfect? Meaningless. What if there's someone better? Meaningless. What if this doesn't work? Meaningless. Compared to what? Compared to losing the chance entirely. Compared to never having the opportunity. Compared to waking up one day and realizing time made the decision for you. No, nothing compares to that. And for the first time I understood what love actually asks from us. Not certainty, presence not guarantees, participation not perfect outcomes, courage. Yet even after learning that lesson I almost made the same mistake again. Almost. And that is the part I have never told anyone because what happened afterward nearly changed the course of my entire future. There was a moment, a single moment when I came dangerously close to choosing the wrong woman for the right reasons. And if I had made that decision, you and I might never be having this conversation. Now, the frightening part, at the time, I genuinely believed I was doing the right thing. And that is exactly why what happened next still keeps me awake. Sometimes the closer I came to that decision, the more convinced I became that maturity meant choosing what looked safe. She was kind, respectable, everything made sense on paper. No chaos, no uncertainty, no difficult questions, just comfort. And for a while, comfort felt like wisdom. But something inside me refused to become quiet. Every time I imagined the future, a strange feeling appeared. Not fear, not excitement, absence. As if I was building a life while leaving my heart behind. That realization terrified me because I understood something most people learn too late. You can choose a good person and still choose the wrong future. The night that truth finally hit me, I sat alone for hours. No phone, no distractions, no meetings, just silence. And in that silence, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. If this decision became permanent tomorrow, would I feel relief or grief? The answer arrived instantly. Grief not because she was wrong, because she wasn't you. And the strange thing is that I still didn't know who you were. I only knew that somewhere in the future, there was a woman I hadn't met yet or hadn't recognized yet whose presence would make certainty unnecessary. For the first time, I stopped searching for perfection. I started searching for truth. That's when everything changed. Because love was never supposed to feel like a negotiation. It was supposed to feel like a decision made by two people brave enough to stop running. Maybe that's why I'm speaking to you now. Not because I believe fate lives inside a comment section. Not because I think algorithms create soulmates. But because every meaningful relationship begins with one thing. Someone choosing to respond. Someone deciding not to scroll away. Someone deciding that a connection is worth the risk. And if you're my future wife, maybe that's all this moment really is. A beginning. A tiny signal sent across